Good evening, good evening. Happy Wednesday. Tonight we're going to do chapters 18 and 19. This is chapter 18 of The Power of Awareness, and it is called Be Ye Doers. Okay, he begins the chapter with James chapter 1, verses 22 to 25, which says, Be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass, and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continue therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. Now, the explanation for some of that is the word in this quotation means idea, concept, or desire. You deceive yourself by hearing only when you expect your desire to be fulfilled through mere wishful thinking. Your desire is what you want to be, and looking at yourself in a glass is seeing yourself in imagination as that person. Okay. Continuing, he says, forgetting what manner of man you are is failing to persist in your assumption. Assumption is being, if you recall from the previous videos, um, having the understanding that you are capable of doing much more than you were taught. Okay? There really are no limits to what we can pull in from the ether, manifest into this life, into this time stream, for us to carry on into our experiences. If you think about it this way, everything that you have now, you manifested, probably unintentionally if you're new to the idea of it, but with the assumption that you are fully able to materialize, meet a goal, have an experience that occurs to you. If the Most High gives you a vision, believe me, he gives you the tools to carry it out into fruition. Okay? That's the basic bottom line. Now, the mechanics of it, we've been talking about in each chapter and embellishing on it a little bit more, looking at it from a different angle, essentially using your imagination to feel, touch, taste, smell, whatever it is your goal or desire is before you get to experience it. So being able to mentally and emotionally be in the feeling, in the existence, in the experience of having your goal, your desire before it actually happens. Now, from what I'm gathering, the higher your vibration is, the more you go along in your day with love, peace, joy, the higher level vibrations, the faster your manifestations will come through. If you spend more time in guilt, shame, depression, disappointment, that type of thing, it'll take you longer because you're fighting against yourself, essentially fighting against what you've probably been programmed to believe are your limitations, what is okay for you to have versus what you really can have if you take the brakes off. All right. Um, let's go a little further. He says, let me go over this again. The perfect law of liberty is the law which makes possible liberation from limitation. That is the law of assumption. Okay, to continue in the perfect law of liberty is to persist in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. What I was saying. Okay. You are not a forgetful hearer from the chapter of James when you keep the feeling of your wish fulfilled constantly alive in your consciousness. So, depending on your programming, it might be easier for some of you than others. Being able to maintain the thought of it's coming, it's here. If it's not coming, it's here. You know, my goal is here, my desire is here. It feels like this. I feel like this. My emotions are this way when I have it. It's a level of exuberation because I've attained something that I've really reached for, right? If you're able to maintain that from the majority of your days until it comes in, you're helping the vibrations of the ether to pull it in. You know, when they say God is moving the pieces that need to come together in order for you to have what you've been praying for. This is essentially what it is. With the different societies, there are different ways of explaining how things work. Okay, the basic understanding, let's go back a little bit. These studies began in Egypt. This is part of the Egyptian mystery schools that they chose their students who they wanted to teach, and they imparted it from teacher to student, not so much through the written word, but through parable stories. You know, if you understand the symbolism that comes along with different things, then you'll understand it on a deeper level. And for our purposes, in these days and times, I will refer you to the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. Okay, it's available online on several websites as well as in book form. And you can get it in a PDF. I was able to download it some time ago. So once the teacher taught their students, the students went back to their hometowns or wherever they moved to, and they imparted the information to other people. You know, depending on how they took it in, they were able to teach it in their particular way. So it's not identical because with different people coming from different places with their own understandings, they absorb the information differently. But so you'll find that in addition to dealing with translations from one language to another, you have the word usage. You know, what words will they use in this territory to describe this phenomenon will be described slightly differently someplace else. If you have read a lot of spiritual texts, you'll come across similar ideas because, you know, the truth will keep coming back to you. And if you study, you're almost studying in a circle. You'll get a deeper understanding from different sources, but you're still talking about the same information. So this is how we get different terminology to describe the same phenomenon. Okay, let's keep going. He says, okay, the perfect law of liberty is the law which makes possible liberation from the limitation. That is the law of assumption. To continue in the perfect law of liberty is to persist in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. You are not a forgetful hearer when you keep the feeling of your wish fulfilled constantly alive in your consciousness. This makes you a doer of the work because there's action involved. Think of faith without works is dead. If you have faith that something is going to happen, but you don't put your own action behind it, it's almost like it's a wish. The likelihood of it happening without your active participation is much lower than if you're constantly putting your works, put your words towards gaining that goal, put your feelings towards gaining that goal, put your actions towards gaining that goal. Okay? Your words, your actions, your thoughts. Okay, so you must be doers of the law of assumption, for without application, the most profound understanding will not produce any desired result. The most profound understanding will not produce a desired result without the actions taken frequently. Get into the habit of, essentially, it's a form of meditation, if you're familiar with that. If you've experienced meditation, you're focusing on something, you're getting good at focusing on one thing. That's not to say that there's an absence of other thoughts, because oftentimes our minds will not completely go blank. There's always some stray thought wandering through. We pay attention to it, acknowledge it, figure out what it's pertaining to. Is it something that we need to pay attention to? And then we discard it and refocus on what we're sitting there supposed to be focusing on, okay? Our chosen point of focus. All right, frequent reiteration and repetition, frequent reiteration and repetition of important basic truths runs through these pages. That's what I was talking about from chapter to chapter. We discuss different aspects of the same, bringing manifestations into being, bringing desires into being through the manifestation process, understanding it from its different angles, its different moving parts, the things that make it go. We're not all going to master the same aspects, but whatever we can hold on to, the different aspects that we're talking about from chapter to chapter will help us as individuals to move closer to to be more successful with our manifestations. All right, with the help of the Most High. Where the law of assumption is concerned, the law that sets man free, this is a good thing. It should be made clear again and again, even at the risk of repetition. The real truth seeker, he says, will welcome this aid in concentrating his attention upon the law which sets him free. And he refers to the parable of the talents from the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. He says it's clear and unmistakable. Let's go a little further. Having discovered within yourself the key to the treasure house, that is being able to use your assumption, you should be like the good servant who by wise use multiplied by many times the talents entrusted to him. Now, I have to admit, I heard that story several times in my growing up, and it didn't really click for me until I had this background information from this chapter, okay? With the symbolism, the explanation of the symbolisms that's in the different verses that we read, okay? The talent entrusted to you is the power to consciously determine your assumption. The talent not used, like the limb not exercised, withers and finally atrophies. So, if you don't practice it, the skill goes away. Much like learning a new language, you have to put it into practice. You have to use it on a daily basis, um, use it on the fly. In order to be considered fluent, you need to be able to jump in there at any given point, depending, regardless of the situation that you're in. So the more you practice, the better, and your skills will be sharp, or at least they won't be deteriorating, right? What you must strive after is being. Now, this refers back to the title of the chapter, Be Ye Doers. Okay? Be a thing, be your desire, be your intention, be your goal. From your thoughts to your emotions, to your words, to your actions, exercise that, and you will find that the more you're able to put your emotions behind it, the more you're able to envision the details involved, it'll move much smoothly for you, much more smoothly for you. Okay, the dynamic prevails. Let's see. He says the dynamic prevails over the static, the active over the passive. So once again, that's staying actively in the process of the meditation that's involved in bringing forth your goals, your desires. Actively meditating, don't slip back into giving yourself limitations. Don't slip back into giving yourself um, parameters. The same thing, limitations that might reflect on what you were taught, as you were growing up. You got to be able to think out the box and stay doing that consistently, because I like to talk about architecture. Recently, I came across a couple books that was describing different Islamic arts, like the calligraphy, the geometric designs on a lot of their architecture, the floral designs on a lot of their architecture. It's essentially a skill that you have to practice for many years, in order to perfect it, to have it be considered something that you would want to pass down through the ages, which a lot of these things we can still see more so if we travel. But if you can get your hands on different books, if you can find different videos, um, it began as a thought. The calligraphy began as a thought. The geometric patterns began as a thought, and they were working it into its perfection. And we have it to witness today. It started in the mind, and it's now on somebody's wall in different places in the world. Okay. um, Technological advancements, there were needs that needed to be filled, and with the use of our imaginations, humans over time have developed many different technologies, from the wheel to the combustible engine to the steam engine, combustible engine, um, wind turbines, for cleaner electricity, cleaner power. Um, we went from uh, let me think. Is it Marie Curie? Pasteur? No. Okay, using radiation as a form of energy, right? We went from coal to different other stages to being able to use radiation from the different materials that we have access to across the planet. You know, it started off as a thought, people put other pieces together with it. Even if you think about gunpowder, it started off as fireworks, materials for fireworks, and it was redesigned into something for military purposes, right? So, depending on your intentions, you come up with different things. If you're into art, music, different forms of design, engineering, everything that we witness today, everything that we're able to use and experience for the betterment the comfort of our lives started off in somebody's thought. So it's not a foreign concept. We just as individuals need to take on that understanding and use it to do our thing, to complete what we've been put here in this existence to complete. Okay? And with that, let me say, one who is a doer is magnetic and therefore infinitely more creative than any who merely hear. Be among the doers, is what he says. All right, and with that, I'm going to close this chapter and come back again for the next video. Thank you.